Hi there and welcome. I'm D++. Welcome to the Art of Mining Bitcoin, where we're going to explain how mining works simply, such that anyone, regardless of their technical ability, can understand it. So let's get acquainted with one another. How many of you here in the audience are miners? Okay. And how many of you are technologists? You're tech savvy, you're coders, you work in tech. How many of you are not particularly tech savvy? Well, regardless of your background, everybody today is going to leave with an understanding of how mining works. Now, when I set off to understand mining myself, I was a little frustrated with some of the mainstream media articles that said things like, miners are competing to crack crazy cryptographic puzzles, or they're competing to solve really complex math problems. You can imagine my delight when I came to find that there are, in fact, no crazy cryptographic puzzles, there's no difficult math problems, and mining is actually just a simple comparison game of two numbers. Now, show of hands. How many of you can compare two numbers? You can look at two numbers, you can ascertain which one's larger, which one's smaller, or perhaps they're equal. We learned this, I want to say, around 6 or 7 in first grade. So while it appears that everybody here can compare two numbers, it's been a while since we were in first grade, so I'm thinking of doing a little refresher course, if that's okay with you. Let's start with an easy one, okay? Which of these two numbers is smaller? How many vote 3? And how many vote 22? A couple, okay, well, the majority rules in that 3 is in fact smaller, so we're doing pretty good. I'm gonna do one that's a little harder. These numbers, of course, are bigger. So how many of you vote that the number starting in 44 is smaller? And how many of you vote the second number starting with 49 is smaller? Well, it's a little hard for me to see because I cannot immediately tell how many digits these numbers have. So if I were to stack one on top of the other, it becomes immediately apparent that those of you who voted for the second number starting in 49 were in fact correct. That guy's smaller. So one little trick that I like to use is I like to pad out the digits such that they are equal with zeros. I add those leading zeros in the front of the number again, such that both numbers have the same number of digits, and I can use a shortcut such that the number with more leading zeros, or zeros in the front of the number, will always be smaller. Are you with me on that? Okay, can we do one that's a little harder? Okay. Now, these are extraordinarily large numbers, and they're in a compressed number format. But don't worry, they're still numbers. So you will see 0 through 9 as well as a few letters in there, but again, it is a compressed number format. The same rule, however, will apply in that the one with more leading zeros or zeros in the front of the number will be smaller. Are we good on that? Okay. So would the first number with 1 leading zero be smaller, or would the second number with 4 leading zeros be smaller? How many of you vote the first? No one. Okay, great. And how many of you vote the second? We have consensus. More leading zeros yields a smaller number. Even if these numbers are infinitely large, we're still just using our shortcut of counting leading zeros. So we're feeling good about that. Okay, so I mentioned that mining is a comparison game of two numbers, and we haven't yet got into what those two numbers are. But before we do, I have to introduce one more concept. Enter hashing. A hash is a mathematical function that takes something in and spits something out. So let's talk about what goes into the hash function as well as what comes out. Now, the input to a hash function will be anything. I call it the kitchen sink. I can input a word, a sentence, a paragraph, an entire book. I could input the contents of my entire hard drive, a cat photo, a cat video, or even a single character. Now, regardless of the length of the input, the output will always be of fixed length. Because the output will always be of fixed length and will be unique, you can consider it to be a summary or a unique identifier or a unique fingerprint of the input. Now, the output will look random, but it's not. It's deterministic in that the same input will always yield the same output. But what's happening inside of the hash function? Well, we're taking that input, again, of what length? Any length. And we are mixing and mashing and blenderizing it beyond the point of no return, which is to say that hashing is a one-way function. Just like falling through a trap door, it's very easy to fall in, but exceedingly difficult to come back out. When I make my morning smoothie with my strawberries, bananas, kale, spinach, oranges, it's easy to pop those ingredients into the blender, but it is impossible to unblenderize my smoothie. So why don't we do an example? Now, there's different implementations of hash functions, but can anybody tell me, in the context of Bitcoin, what type or what flavor of hashing do we tend to do? SHA-256. Okay, so SHA-256 is an acronym. It's very creative. It stands for Secure Hash Algorithm. And 256 is that fixed length output, 256 bits, those ones and zeros that computers can understand exceedingly well, but us humans have a little bit of a harder time interpreting, which is why I'm going to use that compressed number format that we saw before with 64 characters. Now, if you'd like to follow along on your phones, you can head over to dplus.plus/hash, and we're going to hash around and find out. Now, could anybody in the audience give me an example of something to pop into SHA? Today is the day. One of my favorite songs. Now, you'll see the output looks random, right? It is, however, deterministic, meaning today is the day in all lowercase will always yield this result. Now, if I were to make any change to the input, no matter how small, even a single character, it would have an avalanche effect whereby the output would be completely different with no clue as to what went into the function or what changed. However, it would become exceedingly clear that a change was made. The only way to see how the output will change is to go through the hashing process and hash around and find out. Now, for those of you who are technical, you will understand that under the hood, I'm doing some addition with some deterministic constants, some bitwise rotation, bit shifting, and a whole lot of XOR. And if that makes no sense to you, don't worry. Just remember, we're putting it in the blender. I'm going to add a simple piece of punctuation here, and you'll see the result is completely different. No clue as to what changed, however, exceedingly clear that a change was made. Is everybody feeling good about SHA? Input of any length, output of fixed length, happens to be 256 bits, in fact, and we're blenderizing that input beyond the point of no return. No clue as to what the output will look like unless we go through the hashing process that we cannot fake forge, or shortcut? Feeling good about SHA? All right. Now let's talk about those two numbers that we're going to compare in Bitcoin mining. I mentioned we can put anything into SHA. Could I put, say, a Bitcoin block into SHA? What do you think? Now, a Bitcoin block is going to be comprised of a header with some metadata, as well as a list of transactions that are waiting to be confirmed. A result will be returned from SHA, which is a number, a very large number. That's going to be one of the numbers that we're comparing. The second number is going to be what's called a difficulty target. Now, this difficulty target in Bitcoin is set such that blocks are found approximately every 10 minutes. However, today, I'm going to select a target such that we can find a block together without the need for any kind of specialized hardware. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I have my block header with my metadata, including a link to the previous block. That's what makes the blockchain. I've got some transactions, some folks who are waiting to get confirmed into the immutable Bitcoin blockchain, and I'm going to put this block in the blender and see what the SHA-256 hash looks like. Now, if that hash is less than a given difficulty target, which is a number that I've chosen, I found a block. I found a block that will be confirmed on the Bitcoin blockchain that will be immutable, and for my effort, I will be rewarded with 6.25 fresh, baby, just born Bitcoin. Now, it turns out the hash of my block starts with E3, and the difficulty target has one of those leading zeros. So is my hash less than my target? It's not. Now, we saw before when we made any kind of change to the input to SHA, the output changed dramatically. So could I make some kind of arbitrary change to my block while leaving, of course, the transactions intact? Could I add, say, a random number to my block and hash around and find out how the output changes? Well, let's try. Can somebody give me a random number? 12. I'm going to add the random number 12 to my block. I'm leaving the block header and the transactions intact. And it turns out that my hash changed completely. I had no clue how the hash would change until I went through the hashing process. However, it's not less than my given difficulty target. Could I try a different random number? 42. The answer to everything, 42. However, it's not the answer, unfortunately, to solving our block. Let's try one more guess. 69,420. Nice. As you can see, the hash changes dramatically. However, it's still not less than our given difficulty target. Now, we could try 0. No dice. Now, I have tried this at home, and I happen to recall that 1,234, when added to my Bitcoin block, produces a hash that is less than the given difficulty target. And it turns out I have that leading 0 in the front of the hash that we were looking for. Now, I've solved the block. If this was, again, on Bitcoin mainnet, I would be rewarded with 6.25 just born Bitcoin. Now, that random number that we popped into the Bitcoin block has a name. Can anybody tell me what we call it? A nonce. a nonce, or a number used once. Now, this guess and check brute force process of plugging random numbers into a block header, checking to see how the hash changes, and comparing it to a given difficulty target is actually exactly how Bitcoin mining works. So, no complicated math problems, no crazy cryptograph functions, just a very simple brute force guess and check game. Now, we're going to play a game together, and we are all going to compete to find a Bitcoin block using a mining simulator that I built just for you. Now, today, we're not going to be receiving 6.25 Bitcoins for your effort. However, the winner of the Bitcoin block will be rewarded with 6.25 million Satoshis. So pull out your phones, and let's get ready to go through this guess and check process of looking for that golden nonce that, when plugged into the block, will produce a hash less than a given target. Now, can there be different hashes that are less than an arbitrary target? Meaning there could be multiple golden nonces that find a block? Absolutely. Does everybody have their phone open to their favorite web browser? Because as soon as you see the URL, you are going to start brute forcing this block. Now, once you find that golden nonce, do not be polite, do not raise your hand, blurt it out as loud as possible so that us, the Bitcoin network nodes, can verify that your block is in fact valid. Everybody ready? Any questions? So you're going to open your favorite web browser, get locked and loaded. Once you get the URL, you are going to start hashing. You're going to be inputting random numbers. All right, d plus dot plus slash easy. If you just got here, we're competing to find a Bitcoin block. So open up your favorite web browser, head over to d plus dot plus slash easy, and start guessing. Oh, don't be polite. Louder. You're going to tell me if you won. Who was the first to find it? All right. Now, while it's difficult to find a block, it's very easy to verify that work was in fact done. So the golden nonce that solved the block was 5555. Now, the lucky winner of this 6.25 million Satoshis is going to get in contact with one of the lovely staff from Bitcoin Magazine. And how do you guys feel about mining another block? Now, in Bitcoin, every 2016 blocks, which is approximately every 2 weeks, we undergo what's called a difficulty adjustment, whereby we look at the past 2015 blocks and either raise or lower that difficulty target such that blocks are found on average every 10 minutes. Now, if I make the next block more difficult to find, I want you to tell me, am I going to make the difficulty target a bigger number or a smaller number? Who votes smaller? I'm going to make the difficulty target a smaller number because it's harder to find a random number that's within that threshold. So is everybody ready to mine the next block? If you just got here, pull out your favorite web browser and get ready to input the next URL. Now make sure that you don't use the previous difficulty, because if you're mining on the incorrect difficulty, all of us, the network nodes, will reject your block. Is everybody ready for the next round? The next round is d+.plus/epoch. Now, this is a game of chance, which is to say that the process of finding a number beneath this threshold is random. So what was the first gentleman, what was the number that you found? The first gentleman? 5 nines. And it turns out that you are the lucky winner of 6.25 million Satoshis. Congratulations. Again, difficult to find the lucky winner, but very easy for all of us to verify, just like on Bitcoin mainnet. All right. Now, every 210,000 blocks, something very special happens on the Bitcoin network. It's called the halving, or the halvening event, whereby the block subsidy gets cut in half. Meaning, if today we're giving away 6.25 million Satoshis, after the halving, the subsidy will be reduced down to 3.125 million Satoshis. So we do have time, I believe, for one more block. However, we are going to incur a halvening event. So keep your phones out, get ready for the next round. I'm going to give you a new URL, and you're going to pop in the URL and search for that golden nonce that solves the block to win 3.125 million Satoshis. All right, d+.plus/halve, HALVE. We are undergoing a random guess and check game, looking for the golden nonce that when plugged into the Bitcoin block header yields a hash less than our given difficulty target. We have also undergone a difficulty adjustment. I did make this round a little easier to find, given that often the incentives fall off somewhat after a halving event. Now, this is a completely random game, meaning just because I adjusted the difficulty downward does not mean that you're necessarily going to find the block sooner, given that it is a game of chance. And if you just entered, be sure to head over to d+.plus/halve to look for a golden nonce that solves the block to win 3.125 million Satoshis. Now, in this example, there's 2 leading zeros, meaning you're looking for a hash that is less than a given difficulty target, starting with 0, 0. If you just got here, head over to d+.plus/halve and guess and check a random number that it gets plugged into a Bitcoin block that hopefully produces a hash less than our given target. Now, interestingly, we did adjust the difficulty down. However, given the fact that this is a random lottery, sometimes blocks take a little bit harder to find. In Bitcoin, we expect to find a block every 10 minutes, but if anyone has actually been waiting for a block to get confirmed, you may have noticed that it sometimes takes longer, sometimes takes up to an hour or more, and sometimes comes in instantly right after a previous block. Now, when you find the answer, blurt it out. Do not. All right. Let's hear it. All right. All right. 965. Lucky winner. Now, that was a hard one to find, again, because it is a game of chance. Now, while the nonce was difficult to find, it's easy for you to verify, just like Bitcoin. Any questions? Any questions? How do we know that 3 is less than A? Well, I did mention I'm using a special compressed number format, given that 256 bits is a little hard for us humans to read. So in the case of this type of format, A is analogous to 10.
Can we play this game with these links at a local meetup to teach other people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At your local meetup, you're welcome to use my open source tools that I coded for you with love. And it's a very fun exercise at a meetup. And you're welcome to create a game whereby you can give away prizes for the winner who finds the golden nonce. Any more questions? Yeah. Does anybody have a secret method? The winners who found the golden nonce, what was your method? Okay. Combos of numbers. Any secrets? Does anybody have any secrets? Because if you have a secret, I want to actually apply it to my mining operation at home. If there's some way to shortcut this process, I certainly want to know. As far as we know, however, there's no rhyme or reason to finding that nonce. You simply have to brute force, guess and check, hash around, and find out, and do the hard work that is computationally intensive, that does require electricity. Any more questions? Yes. So when you are mining on Bitcoin, you don't want to reuse proof of work, meaning you don't want to check the same number. So we actually use more than one nonce, meaning you're going to have a nonce for your worker or miner, as well as a nonce that the worker is guessing. That's right, because they're going to have more than one nonce at the same time. Any more questions? How do you guys feel about mining now? Is it easier than you thought? Would you have ever guessed that it's a simple brute force process? No crazy cryptographic puzzles, no difficult math problems, just a game of chance, like playing the lottery. Well, thank you so much for coming, and that's all we have today. The winners, enjoy your Satoshis and make sure to find a staff member who will get you paid.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.